Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The New York Giants 2024 schedule has been revealed. Now, as I'm recording this, the official announcement has been made, but how it typically goes is the schedule gets leaked before the actual official announcement. And, maybe there's a couple of things. The only thing I can think of is maybe just like the times of certain games, which isn't a huge deal that I might not, have that information to, but I believe that most of the non-primetime games, or let's just say like the few West Coast games that they have, I believe are going to be 1:00 typically. So let's go through it. There's definitely some interesting things. Now, look, the Giants' outlook on the season is not great. But hey, neither was 2022, to be fair. Expectations weren't high going into that season, and they surprised. And I look at this schedule as definitely easier than the 2023 one, but you have to be careful because you don't really know how a given team's going to do. Sure, you figure the Carolina Panthers are not going to be one of the better teams in the NFL. On the flip side, you figure the Baltimore Ravens are going to be really good. So some of the things, are somewhat obvious. So you try to base it off of previous, knowledge and information. But I'm going to look at it more so, in terms of we're going to go through sort of each game. We're not going to spend too much time on each one, but just kind of where is their bye? Where is there going to be night games, holiday games, things like that. So now this year, the Giants, the one NFC North team they play, the way it lands is the Vikings, which is actually, now look, if we're to consider, and obviously going to the season, I want the Giants to do well now, and I want to root for them the whole season. So it could either be good or bad depending on how you look at it. But under the scenario that the Giants have a competitive season and not rooting for them to lose games, they play the Minnesota Vikings week 1, which really, there's no other way you could look at it. They are the weakest team in the NFC North. Whether it's going to be J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold, the quarterback, the Detroit Lions have shown that they're a really good team. That's been the case the last few years. The Green Bay Packers had a nice playoff run, and they're always competitive. And the Chicago Bears, drafting Caleb Williams and making tons of other additions as well, they seem to really be on the rise. And so therefore, kind of by process of elimination almost, the Vikings, and they're not really a bad team at all to me, but they are the worst. So this is a game, short. What I'm trying to say is the first game is home against the Vikings, which should be a 1:00 start. And then the second game is week 2, also 1:00 likely at the Commanders. And the Giants have had success versus Washington, more specifically when it seems the Giants are not in the race. It seems like when it typically happens. But even beyond that, the Giants have had Washington's number for a while here. So the first 2 games will be very imperative for the Giants to get up on the mat and start 2-0. Because we're going to talk about the schedule after that. It gets tougher for the next 5 or 6 games. So home against Vikings at the Commanders, you might be facing 2 rookie quarterbacks. In the case of Washington, it's almost certainly going to be Jaden Daniels. And with the Vikings, it might be Darnold. But even if it is Sam Darnold, and look, the fact of the matter is that the Giants, they're not going to be favored in many games. They're just not going to be. So I'm sure the Vikings and the Commanders look at those as games. Okay, yeah, we're facing the Giants. That's a winnable game. So it goes both ways. But those are 2 games to start that are not overly difficult. But then it gets tougher. So now week 3 is going to be at the Cleveland Browns. And Cleveland is definitely a team that is highly thought of. They made the playoffs last year. We'll see what Deshaun Watson can kind of do in year 2 if he's healthy. But that's not going to be an easy game at all. And this is the first time the Giants have played at Cleveland in a while. So they go to Cleveland and Pittsburgh. And I want to say that they haven't played at either place since, I think, was it 2016? I could be forgetting, but I think it might have been 2016 in both cases. Because that's just kind of where it lands, where the North was 16, 20, and 24. So that does kind of line up. So it's been a while since they've gone to those places, and so they go to Cleveland, and that will be a tough game. Then September 26th will be a Thursday night game against the Dallas Cowboys. So it's going to be two. So to get, to preview ahead, the other time they play the Cowboys will be Thanksgiving. We'll talk about it once we get there in Dallas. But this will be a Thursday night game. And look, the Giants seem to play the Cowboys a lot in prime time. Not so much. I can't really ever say I can remember a Thursday night game versus the Cowboys, though. It's not ringing a bell, so it's a little bit different. It's a quick turnaround from Cleveland to Dallas. That's going to be tough, and that's why going 2-0 is going to be key to start. And then week 5 at Seattle, which can be a tough place to play. We saw the Giants lost there a couple of years ago. So and not for nothing, the Giants lost against Seattle at home last year on Monday Night Football. So that's another tough one, but to me, especially because it's in Seattle. So you have all those games. Then week 6, Sunday Night Football home against the Bengals. And what's kind of funny about that, too, that kind of reminds me of 2016, again, home against the Bengals. That was a Monday night game, and the Giants won that game. The biggest difference now is the Bengals are a much improved team, of course, with Joe Burrow and company. So, again, Browns, Cowboys on Thursday night at the Seahawks, Sunday night home against the Bengals, and then the return of Saquon Barkley in week 6. So Barkley, if he's healthy, which is a big question mark, the Eagles will come to MetLife Stadium. And that's another tough game. And then that could be considered the last of that tough stretch. Or if you want to, and this one's kind of borderline, Monday Night Football, the only Monday Night Football game of the season for the Giants, will be week 8 at the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the thing with that is Mike Tomlin is known that the Steelers, either it's a streak or it's just a large sample size. They are very good on Monday Night Football. I believe specifically at home, but just in general, at the very least on Monday Night Football, they seem to do well. So for that reason, that makes it a little bit tougher. I don't know how Pittsburgh will be. So it's going to be at least 5 or 6 games that are going to be difficult. Then it kind of lightens up. Where you face the Commanders again in week 9, this time at home. And then the Giants will travel to Germany to take on the Carolina Panthers. So originally that was going to be at Carolina, but instead it will be in Munich, Germany. And the Giants are 3-0 in international games, but this will be the first time they play in Germany. And again, it's a winnable game, but we'll see what happens. And then they have a bye, which makes sense coming off of that trip. So through the first 10 games, if you can find a way to somehow go 5-5, to me, that's a win. More realistically, I think you're more looking at 4-6 probably. But again, I think it's a win if you can be 500. And I'll say overall, it ends up working out where it's 9 home games, 7 road games, and then 1 on a neutral site. So that's not bad either, because this is the year where the NFC gets that extra home game, and then plus you lose that road game that would have been at Carolina, and instead it's going to be in Germany. So you have that Week 11 bye, and then coming out of that, home against the Bucs, which obviously they won the NFC South last year, but it's not an overly imposing matchup, but it won't be easy. I mean, no giant matchups will be, really. And then a quick turnaround, Thanksgiving against the Cowboys. So it's 2 Thursday games this year versus the Cowboys. Like I said earlier, a Thursday night football game, and this one on Thanksgiving. That's going to be tough. You can't be overly confident about that one. Maybe things turn out differently, but I am surprised that they went back to that well, considering that we saw Giants-Cowboys just 2 years ago, but they're doing it again, and hopefully this will be a better result. Then a little bit of a break, right, because you have that Thursday game, and then Week 14 is Sunday home against the Saints. So you're getting into a lot of NFC South within a short time. Panthers, Bucs, Saints, and then we'll get to the Falcons in a couple of weeks. So home against the Saints. I like the fact that that's not at the Superdome, because that has always been a bit of a house of horrors for the Giants. So that is a good thing, I guess. And then Week 15 home against the Ravens. That's going to be tough. I mean, Baltimore would appear to be a really good team. It's home against Baltimore. Giants did beat Baltimore a couple years ago at MetLife, so maybe that continues, but you have that in Week 15. And then Week 16 at Atlanta. And Atlanta is a team that, likely with Kirk Cousins at quarterback, I mean, they did draft Michael Penix, but the Falcons are another team that is potentially on the upswing. But I think just in general, facing the NFC South, not a terrible thing. That's probably your most ideal thing. And I think the Giants catch the break with home against the Vikings, but at the Seahawks, it could have been worse. But if you're to be greedy, You would have preferred at Arizona, but of course the Giants didn't finish in last. They finished in third, and so it lined up with Seattle. But anyway, you get the Falcons the third of last week, and then the last 2 weeks is the same exact schedule as 2 seasons ago, where it's home against the Colts and at the Eagles. So weird that turns out. In the case of the Eagles, it kind of makes sense because you know about these NFC East games that have to be in the last week of the season. But in the case of the Colts, there's a little bit of history here, as it's the 100th year anniversary for the New York Giants since their existence in 1925. So the Giants-Colts, what was considered the greatest game of all time, happened it will either be 66 years to the exact date or 1 day off. And that game was at Yankee Stadium. I believe this will be a home game for the Giants. And we don't know yet whether it's a Saturday game or a Sunday game. So could go either way. And if both teams are in the hunt, chances are they'll move that to a Saturday flex. And if they're not, they'll just leave it on Sunday. And then with the Eagles, same sort of thing where it could be Saturday or Sunday those last 2 weeks of the season. So in the Eagles case, like that's a tough last game, but you never know. Maybe the Eagles are resting up, for like what happened a couple of years ago, where the game didn't mean anything to either team. Actually, it did mean something to the Eagles. So I take that back. The Eagles didn't need to win that game to lock up the 1 seed. The Giants were the team that was locked into their positioning. So that's your schedule. It's not that tough. It's just what worries me is that stretch, that week 3 through about week 7 or 8. Can the Giants survive that? And that's why those first 2 weeks, I think it's important to not only win one, but to win both. I think to go 2-0 would be really important, and it gives you the ability to lose some games and not be crushed coming out of the bye. Because that's the goal for me. I want to come out of that bye somehow 5-5, at worst 4-6. But I do think if you're 4-6, I don't think that schedule the rest of the way is easy enough to overcome that. Again, you have Thanksgiving Cowboys, you got the Ravens, you have the Eagles last week of the season. So that's kind of the goal and the blueprint, is to somehow stay 500 and find a way the last 7 games of the year to try to maybe go 4-3 and eke out a 9-8 record and hope you have the right tiebreakers to land one of those last playoff spots. I think that's a best case scenario, but we'll see what happens. Last note, it was announced that there will be the first time ever, HBO Hard Knocks Offseason edition. Now, I think for fans of other teams, you hear that the Giants, which, look, right now it's not one of the more exciting franchises in football, and the fact that it's not in training camp may not be that exciting, but for a Giant fan, this is pretty cool, that hopefully we'll find some interesting things out behind the scenes. And there were a lot of interesting storylines. I don't think they're going to get into the whole, Wink Martindale situation, which happened right in the beginning. I just don't know that from an entertainment standpoint, that'd be awesome. But look, the departure of Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney, that's got to be involved. Trying to trade up for Drake May, I kind of hope that's in there. I know that could cause some controversy, but I really hope that I hope it sheds light on some things. And sometimes I know it can get edited out. So, but yeah, it's going to be some good content. That's going to be, I think, 5 episodes. I assume about an hour long each, and we'll see. I might maybe do for each episode, depending on how it is and what's going on. Maybe I'll do a recap of those Hard Knocks episodes. So yeah, that'll be fun. I believe that premieres July 2nd or so. So we got some time, but that'll be fun. So again, 2024 schedule is out for the New York Giants, and it's got some interesting things. A Thanksgiving game. A game out of the country in Germany. So we'll see what happens. And then, like I just said, Hard Knocks will be pretty fun to see. The first ever off-season edition. So yeah, a lot to look forward to as far as the Giants are concerned. And, I don't think expectations are high going into the season, but maybe, just maybe, they can surprise. And I hope that somehow it's somewhat similar to the 2022 season.